Did they use remote viewing to find Saddam Hussein?
Yeah, that's not classified anymore. That's pretty much out in the public. You know, in 2005 or 6, when they were looking for Saddam Hussein, they had military remote viewers on station 5 or 6 kilometers away from his actual location. He had a cell phone, and they were tracking him. But then he got rid of the cell phone, so they couldn't track him anymore. They had some of his colleagues in custody, interrogating them, trying to find out where he was, but they weren't giving up where he was. But this one particular, really a low-level remote viewer, I think he's only an E3 or E4, but he had unique abilities, pinpointed where he was. But what's ironic about this, he kept telling his commander he was underground at this location. But when the commander of the team heard this, he said, the guy don't know what he's talking. He's not underground. He's at a building. He's at some building.
That's amazing.
So when they went there, they opened up the hatch, and there he was. Now, I can tell you other times where they were off, some remote viewers were off by a few hundred yards or a town. I was in Europe trying to figure out where somebody was that had went into Czechoslovakia. We tried to get all sorts of assets in there and NSA satellites and so forth. But little did I know that they had a remote viewer working on it. I was given a hyperburst signal, which is only 100 bits, but that said he's at this location. Well, we managed to get inside Czechoslovakia to get to that location, and there's nothing there but a farmhouse. And, you know, and actually it was a vacant farmhouse. So I responded back negative, negative, negative. Eventually, over a period of several hours, he got it right. And then we found who we were looking for.
Maybe you could tell me this, Richard. Back in the day, they basically acted like, oh, we're not doing remote viewing anymore. The Army and CIA was like, no, we don't have those programs anymore. Even though they were so successful and we spent millions and millions of dollars on these programs, where is it today?
Well, what happened after the remote viewing program officially closed,
but
it became a special access program under the control of the Defense Intelligence Agency. And they even allowed some military branches, especially the Army, to operate their own system under highly classified programs. The problem is, during that time period, the fact that we had a remote viewing leaked out. So the Soviet Unions, even after the Soviet Union collapsed, they still were our enemy. China was our enemy. North Korea was our enemy. Anything we put out in the press made its way to with our enemies.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So then they decided to put it under a classified program, which is what it is today. It's under different projects, names within different agencies within the government. But there is a active remote viewing. There's a school in Fort Belvoir, Maryland, that trains remote viewers at the high classified school. So they're still doing it.
Has remote viewing been used to better understand the information from our past?
So what I've read is that remote viewing the past bears some challenges. So it seems to be much easier to find a target that is in the current time. You can, for example, foresee something that's happening in the future, but there are so many variables that are, still sorting itself out that the results get really loose. In that way. Basically, I know they have tried to do remote viewing on, I guess, Stonehenge and some other sites like that. But the information that people get is, I'm not quite sure if this is accurate.
Has remote viewing ever been used to find out anything about off-planet intelligences? And if so, give us an example.
Well, the very first people on this planet who have done this are indeed the 1930 Germans. They tapped into all these non-terrestrial intelligences and perceived a lot of information from them through remote viewing. Again, they didn't call it that way, but there were people that were quite busy tapping in those fields, yes.
And what information did they get from that? Did they find out about a new species? Were they able to communicate with them?
Well, they were mostly interested in technology, of course, because the war was just started, was about to start, and they couldn't afford getting any slower, and they were looking for new technology, new weapons. Hitler stated, especially towards the end of the war, that he was just waiting for this magical weapon to finish. So all the information they gathered, which documents say are theories about time, which is pretty sophisticated. I've seen the documents from the Nazis about their theories about time and how time works. No one at that time, no one in the 1940s knew so much about time, and it's what they found out at that time is still relevant today. It's undercover, but it's 80% accurate. They couldn't finish and integrate it at that time because it was too less time, ironically.
Right.
But they had extensive research programs on that.
Something I like to add about remote viewing, when they set up the remote viewing program, it was very administratively controlled, meaning that everything that the remote viewer did was logged. It was documented. Every remote viewer had a sheet that was kept regardless of what he or she wrote on that piece of paper. So everything was really controlled. And every single remote viewing session was graded. It was graded, especially during the training period.